Hey guys, hello and what's up, and welcome to today's podcast. As you know, as usual, we have got our podcast members in today's podcast. We have got Blue Fox.
Hello, hello.
We've got Camazoid.
Hey, it's good to be back for another episode.
I'm very excited because we're doing our old style episodes. We are going to still do the news things, but that's going to be every other month. This episode is specifically about a particular subject in video games, and this is going to be based on characters inside video games. And we're going to try and do all the unique stuff. So anything that builds a good character, anything that makes a good character in a video, we're going to be talking about. So we've got a set of questions for us, and we're going to go through to them one by one. And we've also brought some games along. So start with Blue Fox. Blue Fox, you've brought 3 games along, as I can see on my list here. You've got Madeline from Celeste, Link from Zelda, and Joaquin Guthrie from Valkyria Chronicles, if I pronounced that right.
Valkyria Chronicles.
There's the one. There you go. You got it. Do you want to explain why you brought those characters along?
Yes. The reasons why I brought these characters is I believe they are different between each other, but they do have very strong qualities. Madeline from Celeste is a very unique character from a very unique indie game, and it's not the typical strong character. She's quite weak. She's a child, but she has quite a personality, quite a development throughout the game. The whole game is based on her development, so that will be a quite interesting character to look at. Link from The Legend of Zelda, more specifically Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom. Of course, a classic. It's a game protagonist since the 80s. And it has, although he doesn't talk much in the games, still a lot of good qualities that I want to share about him. And Joaquin Guthrie from Valkyria Chronicles, the first title, more specifically, is also a quite powerful character from a hidden gem, for what I believe. It's one of Sega's most underrated games. And he's a fantastic character, and I'm excited to talk about him.
Very nice and very good. But next we also have on our list is we have another 3 games from Camazoid. These next 3 games are some characters that I recognize, actually. So, for example, we've got Dante from Devil May Cry, which is a game I used to play a very long time ago. We've also got Kratos from God of War, and we've got Doomslayer from Doom. A very inventive name, Doomslayer, right there. Camazoid, would you like to explain to me why you've got those particular characters?
Well, it shows Dante from Devil May Cry basically because of his personality. He's the kind of character that I fell in love with because of his iconic personality. He's someone who's cocky, fun, very wild, and very stylish as well in terms of his gameplay and in terms of his characteristics and and all. I bought Kratos from God of War because of his backstory. His backstory is very well written and very engaging and interesting, especially on the first games. And Doomslayer because of his simplicity. He's a character who's very simply written, and yet the way he looks, the way he acts, and his gameplay style is very engaging and very good. So that's why I brought these characters.
And of course, I've brought along 3 sets of characters myself, and the 3 characters that I've brought along are Henry from Kingdom Come Deliverance. I've got the hero Ferelden from Dragon Age Origins, which is a very interesting character. I'll tell you why I brought him in just a second. But I've also brought along John Marston from Red Dead Redemption. Now, to lead back into Dragon Age Origins, and just a quick little reasoning from me, is the character who is the hero Ferelden, for most people who know that game, that character doesn't speak whatsoever for the entire game. In fact, the voice from the character, the whole reason of how that character builds, is because that character talks through you. So in my particular game that I've chosen, I've also chosen a character that best represents us as we play into a video game, which is something that I thought was quite interesting. Anyway, moving on from this and moving forward into the podcast, we have a set of questions now that we're going to look into and talk about. So without no further ado, let's start building some character profiles and let's find out what makes a really good character in a video game. So we've got a few sets of questions here, and what we're going to do is we're going to read through them. We're going to build a character profile. We're going to create some things that we like about different characters in video games, and then we're going to write them down as a list. And at the end of the podcast, we'll read them out to you what our list is, and then hopefully we'll have a good build for what makes a good character in a video game. So without no further ado, let's get started. Blue Fox, I'm coming to you first with the first question. What elements have you brought from your particular characters that would proceed as good characteristics?
Well, of course, the characteristics that make a good video game character are many, and since I brought 3 characters, there are different characteristics between the 3. But I would say that the main theme that connects them all is honesty, is the path that they take in life that demonstrate how good choices lead to good outcomes. The example first that I would bring is Madeline from Celeste. She's a character that struggles at the beginning of the adventure. She struggles with herself. It's a personal internal conflict. And she climbs a mountain, which is Mount Celeste, but she does it in a physical way. In the game, you physically climb the mountain and you die very often because it's quite a challenging platformer. But you also mentally climb a mountain because she's fighting her own challenges in a metaphorical way. In the game, she understands that there are some roadblocks that she has to traverse. She doesn't know how to do that. She searches for help. She doesn't find it. And the game kind of helps you to understand her and to grow with her. So the main theme of honesty that I brought is, she's honest to herself. She knows she has a problem, and she finds the strength to climb the mountain, which is the point of the game, Celeste. For Link, it's quite an interesting case because Link wakes up after 100 years, so without memory of who he was before, without memory of the world he's in Breath of the Wild more specifically. And the game is exciting in that sense because Link is a character that wants to learn about the world, but he's also goofs around. I mean, yeah, he has a mission to save the princess and to save the world, but he takes it very chill. He goes save random people around the street. He chases animals. It's a character that feels very honest. He doesn't try to always be heroic and always be the good guy. He just does what he thinks to do best, or at least you as the player act with him. And the third character is Welkin Gunther, which is a person that used to be a civilian before a war breaks out in the country where he's in, and he becomes a lieutenant of a small squaddy, and he fights against the Imperials, which are the main force that are invading the country. And he finds himself to be a regular university student, to be a commander in a war, and you can see how he grows as a person. You see him stressed to be commanding people, to determine who lives and who dies in the conflict. But then he learns how to trust his squad. So again, he's honest with himself, with the people he works in, and throughout the game, you truly learn to admire him, and he learns how to be admired. So these are the reasons why I brought these 3 characters.
Okay, that's cool. So that's brilliant. All right. I'm going to bring a different question along to Camazoid right now, and this question is going to make us all go loads and loads of different questions. So basically, the elements that you've brought with your characters, Camazoid, what is it that makes your characters feel alive?
For me, I would say his backstory. I do believe some video game characters' backstory can touch players and make the players more into these characters, engage more with them, wanting to follow their quest to see how it started and to find out how it's gonna end, and to follow this character throughout his journey and the growth that he has. Plus, a character's backstory can be used as a way to progress a game story as well. Take, for example, God of War. More specifically, I'm going to be mentioning the original God of War series, the first game, God of War 1, as you play as Kratos. The further and further you progress into the game, it reveals more about his past, what he's done in the past, and the decisions that he made that led him to become the kind of man who he is as you play with him in the story and you progress into this journey. It is very well made, and it is a motive for the player to keep pushing to play the game, to figure out the backstory behind Kratos' life, to know the kind of decisions he made and all. So I do believe that a character's backstory is as a way to keep the player engaged, to know more about the character, to understand how he feels, his emotions. Are the decisions he made correct or are they wrong? Do you stand with what he did? Do you not? So I do believe the most crucial element when it comes to a character is his backstory. It has to be engaging, meaningful, and give value to the character as well.
I can see what you're saying there, and I agree. I think the character's backstory is very, very important. We will get into backstory a little bit later on down in the podcast because we have some questions to talk about backstories. But one of the things that for me that make a character feel alive, and feel free to disagree or agree, it's the relatability to a character. See, I'm not quite sure about you guys, but when I picked my characters, and I used Henry for this particular example, was the fact that there's no superpowers on Henry. Henry has to learn, pick up skills and all that kind of stuff as he starts progressing throughout the game. But because he's got no superpowers, he's very, very relatable. Like he is the character that probably best represents, not best represents me, but it best represents a human in any aspect. There's nothing special about him. He has to learn everything. But his original, the beginning part of his life, that bit you start playing at right at the beginning, he is basically just like everyone else. He has to wake up, he has to have breakfast, go out, do work. He's a bit silly in some areas and all that kind of stuff. But he is a very human character, and he does stuff throughout that game that make it feel very, very much alive. Similar with one of my other characters, which is John Marston, for me personally. There's nothing superhero about him. He's just really, really good at shooting guns, which is also really cool because, if you're really good at shooting guns, why not? There's the element of going there's nothing majorly super about him, and you can imagine that in his life he would have to do stuff. You don't actually do those side activities, but I think side activities in a video game are very, very important. For the sequel into Red Dead Redemption 2, which is very, very similar to Red Dead Redemption 1, except there is lots of side different activities. So, for example, you can go to shows, you can get your hair cut and all that kind of stuff and choose your outfit. Those tiny little bits in those types of video games, I absolutely love because it just makes the world feel a little bit more real around the character you're playing as. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. Actually, you know what? Before I do, I just want to go to Blue Fox one more time. Blue Fox, for you, what makes a video game character feel alive in your understanding?
Well, I fully agree with what you and Kamisoid have said earlier, the backstory and the personalization of the character, how the character is portrayed, not only in the aspects of being the protagonist of the story, but also, I say, human being. Somebody that it doesn't need to be relatable in the physical sense, because of course, speaking of Kratos from God of War, we are not semi-gods like him, so it's not relatable in that sense, but it's relatable in the sense of, hey, he also has friendships, he has family, he has enemies, he has struggles. And same goes with the characters that I have. More specifically, for instance, Welkin from Valkyria Chronicles, that character is very relatable because he's a 23 years old student that, suddenly finds himself in a war. What would you do in that situation? It's quite a extraordinary situation that he deals with in a very human way, in a very relatable way, I would say. It's not he finds himself in a war and then he becomes super impressive strong man, whatever. No, he struggles badly, but then little by little he learns how to not struggle. So yes, I would say relatability in that field.
Okay, yeah, all right, I understand. Right, you know what? I'm going to go back to Camazoid again for this next question. Should a video game character be unique? So should he be born with superpowers, or should he not be born with superpowers and pick up skills along the way? Which one of those best represents a good video game character? Camazoids.
Okay, this is quite the difficult question, I'll say, because for me, I think it all depends on, let's say, the game world that this character lives in. some can be uniquely born with, well, I wouldn't say uniquely born with a special power, because some can acquire their special powers throughout an experience, kind of like Spider-Man. For example, he did acquire his superpowers through a radioactive spider, and he became kind of this unique kind of person with some special spider powers.
Yeah.
That made him very different from the people around him. But it can also come from other kind of games, because the world within that other game makes everybody feel, I wouldn't say special, but it gives them the same abilities, the same powers, but the way your character uses these abilities, uses these powers, can make them very different than the others.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
just so I get an understanding of what you're saying, and just for the audience translation as well, is what you're saying then, so for games like Skyrim, you have magical abilities, correct? So
Yes.
yeah, so you're no different from everyone else in Skyrim. Everyone else is able to learn how to be a mage, so you being a mage and having magical powers doesn't make you unique. However, the Dragonborn ability does.
If this is some kind of a unique ability,
Yeah.
then it can.
Yeah.
Let's say only a chosen warriors can only wield this ability. Then yes, it can.
It is, as Kamis has said, quite a complex question. I would say, I don't want to say it depends, because it always does, so it's a bit of a redundant answer. But yes, it's in some cases the video game characters are more relatable because they are just like us. So, like the example that I brought earlier, it's fascinating to see somebody that is in your same situation, has roughly your same age, and you see him in a extraordinary circumstance that, of course, you don't wish to be in, which is war. But at the same time, it is also fun to have characters that have extraordinary powers and are the chosen one, and are important for the story because of that reason. So, for instance, Link in Breath of the Wild, he is the chosen one. He is the warrior that has the destiny to destroy evil and to defeat Ganon. So in that sense, gives purpose to the character. And yes, you might say it sounds a little bit cheesy of saying, oh, you are the chosen one. How convenient is that? But at the same time, good story doesn't need to come from always ordinary people. There can be extraordinary people within specific circumstances, and that are given the choice and the chance to do what they have to do. So in this regard, I would say that it works. There's no better or worse between the two, but there are good stories and bad stories that can be derived from both. So story writers really need to be careful with that.
Does the game character that we use need a story to be a good character? Or can you just get away with it from having a free roam game and letting the character choose their own story? So, for example, like a linear story game makes a good character, or being in a free roam where it's something like Fallout, where they can choose which path they want to take.
I do say that backstory is very crucial and necessary for many characters to keep the players engaged and wanting to know more about this character, and to actually make you get interested in knowing this character. But I do believe that when it comes to the other side of your question, free roam, I think that's sort of like the journey the player himself wants to experience with the character. But I think that style of free roaming is more suited to characters that you build, and not characters that are within this world, if you get what I mean.
Okay. I'm going to go with the same question to Blue Fox, because I've noticed that a lot of the games that you've chosen, Camazoid, they're slightly free roam and they're slightly linear at the same time.
I wouldn't say that, basically, because they do have a backstory, and they are story driven. Yeah, they don't support free roam that much. Well, if you
God of War, by the way, like you're God of War.
No. This is when I said that I brought God of War, I am more specifically talking about the original God of War series, not the new ones. When you're speaking about the new ones, I absolutely agree with you, because you can free roam and do whatever you want in God of War Ragnarok, but at the end of the day, you are still attached to a story. But I'm talking about the original God of War games, that you are basically following a one-way journey. Following Kratos' story, and you can't just free roam and do whatever you want. In the original God of War games, you're just basically following this story, and you want to discover more and learn more about what's going on, how's this journey gonna end, what's Kratos gonna do next.
Okay, yeah.
But when it comes to the other God of War games, then I can agree with you. You can basically just screw the story. I'll do whatever I want, kill any creatures, free roam, experience this with Atreus, do whatever that is, and then whenever I want, I can just go back.
Okay. Well, then, all right, moving over to Blue Fox then, because, okay, so yours are a bit more linear than I originally thought. But you've brought along 3 particular games, 2 which I don't know, but I know that I think Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, I think they're more free roam games. So would you have the same kind of answer, or would you go like, okay, so like, would it be still journey and experience, or would it be a bit more like
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Seth, but also my games are quite linear, like Kamizoid.
Are they? Are we going with linear games here?
Well, because what I'm going to say is that I do believe that linear games have, in general, of course it depends on the game specifically, but in general, greater character development than open-wide games. Let me make an example.
Okay.
In a game like Fallout 4, you do have a backstory that is stabilized. You are a veteran of war, you have a family, and then all of a sudden the war breaks out, and you go into the bunker in the vault, and then you come out 200 years later. So you do have a backstory, but from there you can decide who to be. But I would say that since there are so many ways you can develop your character, all of the different ways are quite weak, because of course the developers couldn't make a whole big character development that could work with every single scenario the player would take, because that would mean to make 40 different characters. In linear games, you do not have this problem. So in a game like Celeste, Madeline, she's she. I mean, she doesn't change. You cannot choose how to change her. She changes throughout the story. She changes a lot, but there is it's a platform game. You have to go forward no matter what. You cannot explore, you cannot diverge. You have to move forward with the story, meaning that the story writers have much more room to make a good character, because there's only one character. While in an open world game that has you choose what to do and what not to do, it becomes a bit more difficult. In a game like Zelda Breath of the Wild, it is true that the game is open world, but in the game you don't really choose the outcome of anything. I mean, you can choose what quests to do and what not to do, but I mean, at the end of the day, the decision is like, you either play the game or don't. De facto, there is only one link and one way to solve quest. And the third game that I brought is Valkyria Chronicles. That's also a very linear game. The game is quite literally structured as a book. It's a diary, I believe. I don't remember if it was a diary or like the memories of, but it was basically a diary of war. So it was Welkin saying his story of he being in the war and what happened. So the game is pretty linear. The story already happened. You're playing a huge flashback. And again, I believe it's much more easier for story writers to write a good character when the game is linear than when it's not. So this is my 2 cents question.
Question for you then. As a reply, have either of you played The Witcher 2 or The Witcher 3?
I played the third one.
You played the third one. Have you played number 2?
I have not.
Okay, you generally need to do a comparison at some point on both The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3, because The Witcher 3 is very, very, very open world, yeah? And Witcher 2 is very, very, very linear. And with The Witcher 3, there's loads of different quests you can do. With number 2, it's very, very limited, and you basically have to do all of them. There's a lot more direct information in number 2 compared to number 3. If that makes sense.
Well, but I have not played The Witcher 2, so I cannot comment on how the game is made.
Yeah.
But the Witcher 3, I would say that, for instance, perhaps it's a bit more different than Zelda that I described earlier. But again, Geralt is a character. He's a swordsman. He's a witcher. You cannot really change that. It's not like Skyrim that you can be anything. You can be a sorcerer. You can be a thief. You can be whatever. Like, no, Geralt is a character.
Oh, yeah.
You can choose different things. So in that sense, my Geralt and your Geralt will have slightly different alignments and friends and foes. But again, in general, I would say that the character itself remains quite solid.
Okay.
So, but again, I have not played the second one, so I don't know in the second one if it's even more evident. But in the third one, I would say that
If you
even if the game
haven't
is
played the
open world,
second one, I urge you to check it out. It's very, very nice.
I definitely have to.
Yeah.
I haven't
Right.
played any of the Witcher games. I guess
How
I
have
need to check
you
them out.
not played the Witcher games? It's so totally up your street as well. Oh,
I don't know.
Camazoid.
Haven't caught my interest, to be honest. Yeah, go on.
Is if you start off with The Witcher, I'd say go with The Witcher 3 because it's the most modern, the one you'll get used to the easiest. But then once you're done with it, go to The Witcher 2 straight away. Just be like, because it's just a little bit more extra stuff. And they're both completely different. I went from 2 to 3, but I'd say these days, if you're not sure, go to Witcher 3, then go to 2. But honestly,
They did also announce the Witcher 1 remake. I'll probably
I'm
check
so
that out as
excited
well.
for it. I can't wait for it to come out. I'm going to be buying that thing on day one.
All right.
It was mentioned to me in the
Let's get
comments of
back
one of my videos. I'm so thankful. Whatever your name is, whoever read that in my comments, thank you so much for letting me know that piece of information. Right, okay. Right, moving on. Does the game for the character where we've already just read that one. Does the character need a backstory or start off from scratch? Camazoid, you talked about backstories.
No. I think I get you. So basically, the way I see it, start off from scratch is the character you play with. They give a brief explanation on the world that the character is going to step in. So you don't know nothing about the character, but you step in you step into on this journey. So you basically begin the journey with the character. The character doesn't need a backstory, but the journey is going to be told with the character stepping into this world that's been explained to you. So I think I understand what you said. Best examples for these kind of games are more related with the Dragon Age. I remember Dragon Age Inquisition 2. I think starts off like this.
That's a good example.
It does a brief explanation on the world. And then your character just starts off onto this castle, and you get to understand more about the characters. You engage with them, and you start off on your journey. So I think at the end of the day, I think it depends on the game. Some games do need some characters do need their backstories to get the person interested into this character, to know more about him. And I think some games don't need, just as long as the world, I think there are two major factors. Either the character is interesting and his story is very engaging and interesting. You want to know more about the character and want to know more about his backstory, his personality, the way his story ends, what kind of person he's gonna become, or the story of the world that the character is gonna be in. What kind of world is my character gonna exist in? How's this world gonna evolve with the choices that my character is gonna make? So I think it's gonna depend on two major factors. What factor the developers are gonna choose? Are they gonna choose to focus more on the character, or are they gonna choose to focus more on the world that the character gonna play with, going to step into? So that's what I think.
Well, if I may bring an example of this ladder that you have described, where the character is not quote unquote like too important, but it's the world that is the one that you're exploring. I believe that example that I brought of Zelda Breath of the Wild is a very good example. Because in the game, not only you don't know anything about Link and the world, but Link doesn't know anything about the world because he has amnesia and he woke up after 100 years. So that game really gives you a powerful feeling of exploration because the character itself doesn't know what he's exploring, doesn't know the people, doesn't know the locations. So you as a player are also unaware. Some games try to emulate this. We have mentioned earlier The Witcher 3. And yes, in the game, of course, the first time you play, you don't know the Velem and Novigrad very well, I mean, at all. But Geralt does kind of know the politics and the people, so when he talks, he is an established character in an established world. But when you're playing Link in Zelda Breath of the Wild, you truly don't know nothing, and that makes you very excited to explore, very exciting to learn about the world. So in this sense, I would say that a blank sheet of paper works sublimely in the case of Link. But again, the opposite can also be true, because there are some games where establishing a character very neatly before the adventure actually starts is very important, where you really want to know about the character before he or she gets into extreme situations, because then you can say, haha, this character is shy, so they will not do this, or the character is strong, so they will do that. So yeah, it does depend on the kind of adventure that you're trying to aim towards it. And maybe it's easier to establish the character first and then do the world later rather than vice versa, but they can both work.
I think, and going off the back of both of your answers there, I like the fact that Link has no idea, so he has that drive to explore, which is a very good thing, which is something I completely think that's a very important factor. However, with the backstory and stuff, I also agree on similar kind of things that Camazoid says. However, what I will mention, in my own opinion, I generally think that the world needs a backstory to, like, not so much as the character needs a backstory. If the world has a bit of a backstory, then you know what kind of world you're stepping into. However, the character doesn't necessarily need one, in my own opinion. It's more of the world, because you need to know that this is a world full of mages and humans and different people and all that kind of stuff. Whereas things like, for example, like the exploration feeling is a very good drive. So maybe you can, like, I don't know, there is some things like in Mass Effect that they do give you a bit of background to your character, but it doesn't really, like, I'm not really that bothered about it that much as much as I would be more around what's happening around in the world around me, what's space like, all that kind of stuff. That's more important, because that gives me more of a sense to want to explore and discover different planets and all that kind of stuff. Which I like. I do like both of those elements. So yeah, they're both great. All right, moving on to the next question. Does a character need a unique appearance? Blue Fox, I'm starting with you, and I'm going to get a drink in just a second.
Right. Well, to answer the question, I would say that generally yes. Of course, it's developers don't need to be too obnoxious about it. They don't have to make the character very distinct from the other NPCs, otherwise it becomes a bit awkward. Like the meme of like, guess who's the anime protagonist, and they show you like a picture of an anime of the protagonist with like all the purple hair and whatnot, and all the other people being normal. So yeah, that's
yeah.
I would try to avoid that, right? Because otherwise it becomes a bit on the nose. But in general, yes, they do have to be fairly unique. Otherwise, what's the point? You are the protagonist. You are distinct from the world because you are the player. You're the only character that is controlled outside of the game, because the player controls you. So it has to be fairly distinct. It would be a bit boring to be Mr. Nobody. But again, I wouldn't exaggerate too much. It's there's a sweet spot, I believe, where the character is unique enough to make it distinct, but not too unique that is a bit odd. Of course, there are exceptions. For instance, superheroes, they do have to be very unique. In a game like Spider-Man, you are Spider-Man, so you have quite literally very unique powers and a very unique costume. But in most of the cases of games, yeah, I wouldn't try to push it too hard, but a little bit, yes.
Like with Geralt of Rivia, you can choose outfits, even though they're all quite similar to each other. But the basic part, the part that you really care about your character is how long his beard is.
Yes, you try to keep a shaved beard, right?
Just a little stubble is nice, but nothing more than that. Yeah,
Well, customizing your character, of course, is always a nice feature to have. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like me and Blue Fox, we're nearly gonna have an argument about what the best beard looks like then for a second, for The Witcher 2 or The Witcher 3. All right. Anyway,
when you say unique appearance, do you like mean a character's design? Because I do think that a character's design is also something very important to captivate a player, or to catch, basically more make a character more likable to the player. Because take my character that I bought, for example, Dante from Devil May Cry. He's a very beloved character, not only because of his backstory, but also because of his design, which looks very simple and it gives off a very cool vibe. He's the kind of person who's cocky. He is also badass, fun, and a nice looking character as well. And it is true. Take one of my favorite games in the series, Devil May Cry 3. The very first mission cutscene, the cutscene that introduces the character, is basically one of the best introduction cutscenes which makes Dante look so cool, fun, and interesting. And the player himself basically becomes very interested into this character, wants to know more about him, wants to play the game, wants to basically play and engage with this character. So I do think the design and the appearance of the character is very important for any video game character.
I get what you're saying there. Yeah, I do understand. What's your take on the outfits then for different characters? So, for example, you play GTA, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What do you think about then games like GTA where there's a lot of?
When it comes to outfits, I think outfits try to interact more with a person's taste in the way that he wants this character to look. So, because every single person always tries to make the character he's played with look absolutely different. No person at all would actually choose the same costumes or the same outfit as another player, because each person has his own taste in terms of outfits and in terms of the way he wants his character to look.
So, for example, like me, I want my Michael to wear a suit all the time, whereas somebody else might not. So,
of course,
I like it.
Each person has his own taste in terms of appearance.
I like it. It's good. Yeah.
I think customization is very important. I made a whole video about it, so it's a topic that I truly have to my heart. I don't care too much of like when you have to customize your characters like facial stuff, because at that point it becomes a little bit maybe too detailed.
Yeah, some people really take that kind of customization way too deep, man.
I mean, to be fair, like, you know, if people enjoy it, there is no reason not to have it. I mean, you can always ignore it, but it's myself, sometimes I'm a bit overwhelmed when they ask me, it's like, oh, what type of, eyebrows do you want? And I'm like, okay, just give me eyebrows. I'm not picky. But when it comes to clothing, yes, I would say it's quite important. It gives your character a unique appeal. If anything, I would say that perhaps it is better for video games to have characters that look quote-unquote a bit generic at the beginning, and then throughout the adventure, when you get new gear, you get new items, you get stronger, maybe you defeat a dragon, and then you use the scales of the dragon to make a cloth or whatever, then like you can see your character physically becoming stronger, right? That's a very powerful message. That gives a powers of progression. So both storytelling and game-wise, I would say it's the two things are linked, are intertwined.
Yeah. I like how you're dropping in like a little quote. I like how you're dropping a little link there from your favorite game.
Well, of course I have to.
All right, so I won't hold you up here too long, but there's one thing that I will mention personally to me, and it's just something that I have to go and just mention. It's how much I care about the particular outfits it's offering. See, I don't know about you guys, and I imagine Camazoid's a bit more like this than along with me than Blue Fox might be, because I imagine Blue Fox is probably got this covered or probably made a video about this, but I will moan at this while playing video games, and it would be like if I'm playing a video game, and it's like a fantasy realm thing where it's like you've got you're inside this thing, and your character's going to be the savior of the world, and he's going to be like the knight in shining armor. Well, in that game, I want to wear, if that's armor available in that game, I want armor customization. I want different armors available to me, because I will generally try different armors on to see which one the best armor factor is. However, when it comes to just normal clothing, I couldn't give a care. I really don't care about the clothing in that game. I care a little bit because if it's a free roam game, I'm gonna have downtime. But when it comes to making my character unique, I want different armors. Like if I'm playing a game that has armor, I want different armor. If that makes sense. Like, don't just give me like 3 or 4 sets of armor. If you're gonna give me the option of giving me different armors, give me the option of at least going with at least 20 different armors that are easily findable and accessible as I play throughout the game, so I can feel a bit more powerful than other characters. If I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, I want lots of suits and outfits, you know, and different styles and t-shirts and all that kind of stuff. I don't need armor in that game, because if I had armor in that game, it'd probably ruin it and make it look a bit, you know, make the game not feel as tidied or feel like they try to put everything into that. I don't want everything. I want what they would type of way. You know, I want a bit more direction. It's the same with the Geralt of Rivia. You know, he's all about his facial stuff, so let's give a lot of facial options. Let's do a few different hairstyles. I think The Witcher had it correct in The Witcher 3 about how much options you should. Like, I don't need thousands, I just need a few. But yeah, if that makes sense. Anyway, moving on to the next question. Should a character be alone or have other characters to bounce off Blue Fox? Over to you.
Well, again, it really depends on the type of story the developers want to give with their game, because sometimes it is important that the character is alone because they want to understand themselves. So, for instance, Madeline from Celeste, she's mostly alone in the game. There are some few supporting characters, but are quite very few. But then, yes, in other games, like in Valkyria Chronicles, you're quite literally the team leader, you're quite literally the squad leader, so there is a squad you're working with, so it is crucial that you interact with the other characters interact with the protagonist, they teach stuff to the protagonists learn from the other characters, teach, maybe they sacrifice themselves to save them, maybe the other characters sacrifice themselves to save them, so there is intertwine between the characters. So again, it depends on the game itself. Personally, my personal taste is to have as few companions as possible. To be honest, I'm not a big fan. I do like when the characters, they do interact with other human beings. It's not that they are fully loners, but there is, it's not too overwhelming. I mean, I want the adventure of the protagonist, not the adventure of other random people that I do not care about. So usually I prefer when the character is alone or with very few companions, but that's my personal take.
And Kamazleed?
I absolutely agree with what you said, Blue Fox. One thing that I absolutely hate when it comes to, let's say, games that have multiple characters is when when you are more focused on the main character and you're engaged with the main character's story, and you fall in love with the main character and you want to play more with him, but then at some point the game steps away from the main character and spotlights to the side character as you play in the side character, and they basically take this portion of the game to show you the side character story and everything. And I am not interested into the side character. I want to play as the main one, and I hate when games do that. Take for example, this time around, Seb, I'm gonna be speaking on the new God of War games. One major fact that I hate about God of War Ragnarok, that first of all, the game's named God of War, so the main character for God of War is Kratos. But in God of War Ragnarok, I always hate the portions of Atreus. They basically forget about Kratos, and you only play as as. It's not that I don't like him. I like him as a character, but I hate his portions that you play with in God of War Ragnarok.
Oh, okay.
Basically, okay, not all, but most of the Atreus missions or Atreus stories, I absolutely hate them, because I am more interested to know on the side of Kratos' story, what he's going to do, what his next mission, his next plan, and they throw that away. And hey, you gotta focus on Atreus. Atreus is building a relationship with Angrboda. He's doing this and this. I don't care about what he's doing. I want to play as Kratos, and I want to know what Kratos is going to do about Ragnarok. And I absolutely hate when they just sideline the main character that I want to play with and I'm more interested in, and they basically start to try to make you engage with this side character that I'm not interested in. And that's something that some games, when done wrong, it can ruin the reputation of the game.
Okay, let me ask you this then, based on what you've just told me then. Okay. So, in The Last of Us, and I think you know where I'm going with this, 90% of the game you play as Joel, cool Joel, old Joel, Joel with a bit of a backstory, Joel, yeah?
The first game, huh?
Yeah, the first
Last
game,
of Us
yeah,
1.
it's like Joel, yeah.
Okay.
Joel. There's a little part where he gets kidnapped and you play as Ellie and you try and rescue him, and that's fine. There's a little bit of an Ellie portion. Oh, a little bit more about Ellie and all that kind of stuff. But mostly you're back to Joel again, because Joel's bad. He's like a badass, and he'll take down anyone. He's like, he's Joel. And all that kind of, he's hero and all that. And then you get number 2.
The second game.
Yeah, and you're Ellie. What happened to Joe? I like Joe. I want to put Joe back. Let me play as Joe, please. But that's Ellie's game, and to be honest, I feel like that's a very similar pattern of what you've just told me. And
now, when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2, that's basically the writer's choice, with his, in my opinion, absolutely stupid. Because for me, I always tell this to many other my friends and all. I always tell them that The Last of Us 2 should have been a game about Joel, a little bit about Joel, and then and more about Ellie.
You know what would have been really good, for games like this, and here's the thing: if you want to beat and turn your characters around so you play as somebody else, I don't know how to put this too much, by the way. I think because they do this in movies quite a lot, but I think this would be very cool in a game scenario. If you want to switch the characters, so you play as a secondary character in a game, the main character should be there, but somewhere at the beginning of the game should be like an accident, and they both get out of the accident,
Yep.
This is my take. And then you go through halfway through the game, and there's a point, where the game goes, this character you've been traveling with, they're dead, they're not alive, they don't exist. You've been playing that, he hasn't been there for the entire game. You've been playing without him for the entire game. And it turns out that he's a ghost, and he actually died in that accident way back right at the beginning of the game. And you're like, oh, bugger. And then, that kind of gives you a bit of an arc to kind of like carry on, but carry on without that character, if you get what I'm saying. Because you already have done, you just didn't.
There is a game I've played where that kind of happens, and I'm not gonna say the name of the game, otherwise I would spoil it. But it's not much of an accident, but it's a character that it's sent on a mission that seems to be fairly normal, nothing too extraordinary, but he's with a small team of people, and the more time it passes, and the more he becomes insane. So then some of these characters die off, but he refuses to accept the idea that they died off, and they are simply there, but they're actually there. So it's quite mental. I'm not gonna say the name of the game, but
say it on the podcast. Could you type it down to me personally?
I will at the end of the podcast.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay.
It's a game where something like that happens, where the main character gets so insane for the war he's fighting in that he slowly loses track of what's real and what's not. And one of the things is supporting characters that he doesn't recognize if they're alive or not. And it's
game companies, if you're listening into the podcast, do take this idea, the insanity idea of a game character like that. That would be a really cool to get more games like that. I think that would be awesome, because we wouldn't expect it.
I do remember a game that basically has this kind of concept. I don't know if you guys played it. It's called, I think, Suna Hell's Blade. I would truly recommend it, you guys. It's very interesting. It's a very unique and incredible game. It kind of has like the same concept that you described, Seb. And it's very well done. It's been quite a long time since I played it, so my memory is a little bit foggy. I can't try to remember it very well, but I do suggest to you guys to try it out. The way that the character is written and how she is losing a little bit of her mind is very well made, and they are making her engage with a character who is basically not real. She sees him and talks to him and all, but he basically doesn't exist, and she tries to find him and all.
You see, I don't know a lot of games like that, so I need to check some of these ones out. I feel like there's something that I may have I feel like I have played a game, but I don't know what it would be called. But I feel like that's a really awesome thing. But yeah, I get what you're saying. So at the end, so at the end of that, then side characters are important, but I kind of care about the protagonist. That's why I got the answer for that one. Right, moving on to the next question. I think we're getting down to the final few now. So we'll wrap this up in just a bit and we'll give you kind of a list of what we got. So I'm just going to choose one and then we'll get down to that because we're getting quite into the podcast and we're getting quite near the end of it. So, does the character need flaws and weaknesses to be designed better? Camazoid.
I absolutely think a character needs to have flaws and weaknesses because it leads to a character's growth when he overcomes them. Take, for example, again, going back to Kratos from God of War. This time, again, Seb, I'm going to be mentioning the new God of War games. More specifically, I'll be talking about the DLC expansion, which is God of War Valhalla. In this expansion, Kratos' biggest flaw that he sees in himself is his past. He is basically haunted by his past and all the things that he did. He is scared that he might repeat those past mistakes. And in Valhalla focuses on that. The story is basically Kratos facing in his past, and there's a good reason for doing that. The story tries to tell Kratos that there's a reason why he did the things he did in the past. And basically, in the final part of the story, Kratos is talking to an old version of himself. And what's so beautiful about that portion is when Kratos finally forgives himself and for his past deeds, as he now prepares to move forward, knowing that he is no longer the same man he was. He is now someone who has grown, who has changed, who has friends, has family, who now has who fixed his flaws, his weaknesses, and now became the man that he always wanted to be, the quote unquote God who he wanted to be, which is now he's no longer the God of War, but he sees himself as the God of Hope. So I do think flaws and weaknesses are needed for characters' growth.
Okay. And Blue Fox, I'm going to come to you with a different question just because of the time we've got left on the podcast. So I'm going to give you the last question on the list, which is in a game, should the characters have leadership qualities or could they just be a side character and not have to worry about leadership qualities?
Well, for the question before, I would have just agreed, so it would have been redundant to say more. But
Okay.
yes, I fully agree with Kamisoid. For this latter question, I would say it's not needed per se, because a character can be individualistic. They might just think about themselves and the good of themselves or the people surrounding them. It doesn't have to be that the character has to think of the greater good and thus be a leader. But I would say that to make a I don't want to say banal story, but to make a kind of story that is easy to understand and it's fairly standard, and yes, I would say that protagonists do become leaders at the end by learning how to not only work with what they have, but also learn their shortcomings and how to improve them. So I would say yes, but it's not a must. It's common that it happens. It's expected, but there are definitely games where it doesn't happen and they still work quite sublimely.
All right. I think that's a good few amount of questions we've got there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to review what we've said. And what we're going to do, we're just going to give them a list. So right now on your screen, we will disappear off our lists. Well, you know our voices by this point. So we're going to disappear and it's going to be on your screen a list of things that is going to appear as we say them. And we're just going to say whether we agree or not agree based on what we've just talked about. So first one, and this comes from Blue Fox. The character needs to be honest. Would you agree?
Well, I said it, so yes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Sorry, just to explain, just a little bit to cover up this particular one. What did you mean by honest originally? Just for a recap.
Well, when I explained it earlier, I realized that I kind of rushed it a little bit. But to better develop my answer is that, to be honest to itself, the character needs to understand where they are at the beginning of the story, need to develop throughout the story, and need to understand what they did wrong before or whatever the situation was, and learn from that and be honest with themselves and say, okay, now I know who I am, I know what I can do, what I've done, and from here move forward. So honesty to be themselves rather than to fake and to pretend to be somebody that they're not, and at the end of the story they don't solve anything.
Okay. And then Kamazo, did you want to say something at the end of that?
No, when you mentioned honesty, I was a little bit confused because I don't think that honesty is something that is very crucial for a character. But how you said it, Blue Fox, I think I changed my mind. I think when it's put in a way like you said, Blue Fox, I think honesty is needed for a character, and in terms of growth, his growth, yes.
There is a game I'm not going to mention, but there is a particular game where you play as a particular detective. Yeah. However, at the end of the story, it turns out that the detective that you play as turns out that he is actually the bad guy. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, why am I generally trying to solve certain cases in this game when I was that person all along? And it just kind of got a little bit confusing on certain elements. It wasn't very, it's as you put, it wasn't very honest to me, so it just confused me a little bit. However, I get what you're saying. Because if you don't have honesty in, when it comes to playing as your characters, you get that kind of thing on your audience where the audience kind of has to go, well, doesn't that kind of screw up the story of the game a little bit? Because you get that kind of feeling. But anyway, okay. And then and then Kamazoid, the journey and experience are also important.
Of course, the journey, the journey that the character goes through is very important for the character you play with, because it's the experience that the player himself is going to go through. Yeah, that's what I think. I don't have a lot to say about it, because it is one of the most major factors within the game is the journey that's going to follow, that's going to take this character to. It can end in a bad way, or it can end in a good way, or it can give you a choice. For example, there is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, where you follow the journey of Sekiro as he tries to protect his master and all, and half in the game you get to decide to disobey your master and do something wrong, or just continue to obey your master. So that way you get to decide on how the journey of the character ends. So yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. Okay, and then to Kamazoid. Sorry, not. It was for both of you actually, but I'll tell you what. I'll go with Kamazoid again on this. More focused story instead of an open world map.
That depends on the game that you want to make. Some games are more fun when it comes to when they focus more on their world building, when they want to deliver an experience to the player to engage within this world, to try to deliver some kind of a unique world and give a unique story into this world that can engage to this player and wanting to basically know everything about this world. Or you can get to choose to simply craft an interesting story for a character that keeps you engaged and basically makes you want to know more about the character's story, his backstory. Wanted to know why he became this kind of person, why he made these kind of decisions. So I do think it depends on what you choose, whether you want to make an engaging story for a character or whether you want to make an interesting world for the player to experience, to explore.
Okay. And then that leads us into our next question with Blue Fox on this one. The power to feel, to explore. Basically, the drive to explore in a video game. I think you explained it with the amnesia in Link.
Yes, I would say that it's a powerful tool when the character, or the protagonist more specifically, does not know the world as well as the player, because if the character knows the world very well, then the character may take for granted lots of things, or at the very least it makes it a bit unusual that the character is asking so many questions when they clearly should know what they know about the world. So yes, in the case of Link in Breath of the Wild, it works sublimely because the character knows as much as the player, and then the player, when he learns or she learns new things, then it's also when Link learns new things. So there's kind of a symbiosis between the two.
Yeah.
So yeah, the character shouldn't be too aware of the world, because otherwise, where's the surprise?
And then Kamazoid, he mentioned the backstory of the world is included to put in, but not so much the character.
That when I said that basically depends on what you choose. Do you want to make the world more interesting, or do you want to make your character's story more interesting and captivating to push you to play? Basically, for example, take one of my favorite video games, Elden Ring. Elden Ring it makes this world very interesting and to explore and to discover. Compare that to perhaps the game that you said, Seb, The Witcher. You say that The Witcher is an open world, but I do think, the way I see it, since you play as I forgot the main character's name, but basically, Geralt, I do believe that you still, sure, you can. It is an open world game, and you can do whatever you want in it. But at the end of the day, you still have to follow his story from start to finish.
True. And then Blue Fox. Appearances, optional appearances, but not too much optional appearances.
Yes, I think it's important to personalize and customize your character as relevant to the story and the place where they find themselves, because you don't want to be playing a medieval game where you dress your character in modern clothes. Like, there has to be some sort of connectivity to the world. It depends, because there are some games where, they are so absurd, like Sunset Overdrive, where the absurdity is the game. But generally speaking, I would say that yes, the more customization the better, but it has to make sense in the world where they are.
Okay. And then I think you both said this, but I'll go with Camazon on this one. Not so much importance on the main character, but more important on the protagonist. So the adventure of the protagonist is more important than other characters in the game.
Of course, because basically he is the main character for a reason. So you want to focus more on the main character. You want to play as the main character, know about the main character, the choices he makes, and everything. And you can't just basically sideline the main character just so you can engage with some of these other characters. And when done right, it can be very good, because some of the side characters can be engaging and very well written, and you want to play as them. But when done wrong, it can really hurt the main character as well as hurt the game. Some games did it very well when they sidelined the main character and made you play with the other characters, and some didn't do it very correctly. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to lose control of the main character. At least when you play as a side character, give me a reason for it. Maybe the main character that I play with got hurt and he is no longer able to move or something, or he's busy doing something else very important. So you gotta play as the other character and you gotta keep the story moving. But if you're just going to, if the main character is right there and you're literally just sideline him, nope, the main character is just, you can't play with him. You gotta play as a side character because he needs to figure out something, and that's the wrong way to do it, I think. So put more focus on the main character, and if you want to give, let's say, the spotlight for the other characters, at least give a proper reason for this side character to step in, to take the spotlight.
Okay, 2 more to go. And then I think it was the one that you said mentioned, Kamazoid. I'll go back around to you one more time. And it was the character needs flaws. I think we both agreed on that, but you gave an example on Kratos' past mistakes.
Yes, for those who have played the original God of War games, truly know what the kind of things that Kratos done, the horrible choices, the horrible choices that he made, the many people he killed and all, and those flaws and mistakes still follow him even throughout the new games. And at some point, any main character is going to face his past. He needs to overcome him in order to grow, in order to become a stronger character, a much better person. So I do believe that flaws and weaknesses are necessary for a person's growth. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And then finally, right at the end, we've got Blue Fox with your very last part, which is protagonists can become leaders and improve as the game goes on, though it's not required.
Yes, I would say that I would claim that once more. The character doesn't need to be a leader, because being a leader also requires the character to take the lead on something, and some characters simply do not want to do that. The character might take a lead on themselves, so to solve their own problems, their own conflicts, but not other people's conflict. So I would say that it is appreciated when the character learns to be a leader, because it means that they not only understood what to do, but also are able to teach it, which is a very powerful skill. But it's not required. I think there are some games where this doesn't happen. On the top of my head, I cannot think of examples, but there are definitely games where the character thinks of themselves and themselves only, and the story can still work quite nicely. For instance, I have an example. For instance, on Bioshock Infinite, I would say the wit doesn't become a leader per se, but there is character development in that game, and I wouldn't say that the character is weak for that.
And I love it. That's brilliant. And there you go, right there. That is the podcast, and that is our list on what we think characters in video games should have. We've said it all right there, so hopefully now you get a bit of an idea of what builds a character. And if you're a game company or you're getting into game designing and you're thinking about what things do people care about in a character, well, I hope this helped you get to know some stuff about what goes on inside our heads, which is insanity. But anyway, without no further ado, that is our podcast right there. I've been Seb, and I've been joined by Blue Fox and Camazoid.
Always a pleasure
It's
to
always
be here.
To be here.
You guys both think I love it. It's great. And of course, and of course, all their channels are linked in the description if you want to go check them out. They make some really cool videos. Camazoid's is always experimenting with things on Elden Ring. And you got other series going on, or is it Elden Rings at the moment?
No, it's only Elden Ring at the moment. I really want to try out other things, but with the limited budget, I guess you do what you can with what you have.
You know, I challenge you to play The Witcher, okay? At some point, I challenge you to play The Witcher.
I will. I'll probably start
The Witcher 3.
As soon as I think I'm gonna start
Number 2?
Chronologically, I guess. With the remake. When the remake of the first game comes out, trying to try the first one, then the second, and then the third.
Yeah, all right.
I'm gonna go chronologically, I guess.
Okay.
I don't want to do the same as I did with the Dark Souls series. I played the second game, then the third, then the first. This time around, I want to start from scratch.
Blue Fox, we've just come to the beginning of April. Have you got any plans in April? Well, we did. Well, it's the end of March, so it's April tomorrow. So, what have you got any plans for what you're going to be doing on your channel this April? Any secret videos that we don't know about?
I should have released a video a couple of weeks back, which it's a quote-unquote sequel on the one I've made for Kiryu Kazuma, which was the idea of where we got this podcast from, to make a discussion regarding video game characters. But this time, rather than to discuss the protagonist of the story, I'm discussing the antagonist of the story, which is Koro Mashima, which it's also quite an interesting character. And it's not the antagonist in the sense of it's evil, because he becomes quote-unquote good, but he's an anti-hero. So I've made a video essay about him, and I'm hopefully, I'm excited for it. I think the script is very powerful, so I just have to finish the edit, and next Wednesday should be up.
By the time you watch this, it is edited and it is up, hopefully.
Yeah. Because it's live. So
because this is March the 31st. Right. Okay. Okay. By the way, side note: if I challenge you to play some Kingdom Come Deliverance, will you play some Kingdom Come Deliverance?
I may. It's on my wish list, so it's not far off.
Okay.
Give me some time.
Give you some time. Okay, sure thing. All right. There you go, right there. That is the podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed. I've been Seb, and thanks so much for listening. I will catch you next time on another podcast, and I will see you guys later on. Goodbye from me.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Goodbye.